grief, it's complicated. You know, there are several types of grief and stages of grief that it can all start to feel a little bit textbook. And the whole act of grieving can get lost. And we don't always all grieve in the same way and on the same timetable. Grieving is individualized to the person and to the loss that they experience. But you have like traumatic grief. And that's a grief that's outside of the natural order. Like when a parent loses a child, or when the loss is from an accident, or suicide, or homicide. That's a traumatic grief. And that's going to hit in a different way. And then you have your collective grief. And that is when you experience one loss and before you had a chance to recover from that one, you have another loss. A lot of us felt that during COVID. And then you have your cumulative grief. And that is a grief that is felt by a group, like COVID, or like some of the shootings that's been happening. It's a collective grief. And we experience it in different ways, and we have a tendency to want people to grieve in the way that we grieve and to grieve on our timetable. And if it's taking too long, then we begin to judge. And unfortunately, we have equated grief to a lack of faith. And that is wrong. Grief has very little to do with your faith. When you lose a child, it's as if the heart got ripped from your body. Like you can't even imagine wanting to live past that pain. And when you lose a parent, no matter how old you are, and especially if you've lost both parents, you can feel like an orphan, a 60 or 70-year-old orphan. Grief hits us in very different ways, and it's important that we recognize the way a person grieves and we respect their process. And one of the things that I think is kind of hard to grasp hold to, and that's, what do you say to the person that's grieving? Now, I'm going to tell you one of the most triggering things that you can say to somebody that's grieving is, I'm going to pray for you. Or, it's God's will. He knows best. That is so triggering because the person that's grieving, they're feeling a whole bunch of things. And one of those things is anger. And they're angry at God because he could have stopped it. He could have done something and prevented it. And he didn't. And so one of the last things that a person that's grieving may want to hear is, I'm praying for you and it was in God's will. Now, you absolutely should pray for them. You absolutely should stand in the gap. You should find out what they need and do what you can to help supply those needs. And you don't have to make a proclamation. You don't have to announce that you're praying for them. You just need to do it. But give them time to trust again. Give them time to laugh again. Give them time to heal on their timetable. And, we all gotten accustomed to grief being non-complicated. A person grieves on we'll give them a little bit of time. If they lost a child, we'll give them a little more time. If they lost a parent, we don't give them as much time. And now if it's the traumatic grief, we give them a little bit more time. But we tend to want it to happen when we want it to happen. And then when they seemingly come to life again, and you want to just take them out of the house, you just want to get them involved in something, and you do, and they laugh, that can trigger them right back into a depression, back into the heart of grieving. And that is okay, because they're just trying to get back out there, and their feelings and their adjustment to the new normal is traumatic. And they may regress and they may progress. And it may be a swinging, swinging, swinging that's happening, but it's necessary for their healing. It's necessary for their process. And so respect the process. So it's like allowing them to ride your wagon, regardless to if they're dragging their feet. Just carry them. Just find out what they need and just be that. And sometimes they don't need you to say anything that's going to make them feel better. They just need you to understand their process and respect it and support it. Grief is complicated. Think about it.